Welcome to TM Radio Broadcasting. My name is Frank Allen. We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date is Wednesday, March the 13th, 2024. If you'd like to call in to listen, dial +1 518 801 1318. If you'd like to call in and ask a question, dial +1 617 987 8603. Tonight, we all have the great pleasure of spending an evening with Shiloh Taylor, congressional staffer for the House of Representatives, an activist for being politically right, and an activist for the targeted community. I'm going to turn the floor over to Shiloh Taylor. Go ahead, Shiloh.
Hi, Frank. Thank you for having me this evening.
Oh, my pleasure.
And as you mentioned, I was a staffer for the U.S. House of Representatives from about 2008 to about 2016 for the now Senator Ben Ray Lujan. And then I was also involved in party politics during that time. They're separate. Obviously, the official office is, the U.S. House of Reps. And then there's the whole other party politics that goes along with the campaign side and, party politics itself, the party platform, etc., delegates, that sort of thing.
I see. I have a number of questions that I would like to ask you. Is there anything else you would like to add before we get into that?
Not necessarily about that, just I do have a more rounded, I started in small business accounting, owned a construction business with my dad. When I was younger, did a lot of different small businesses, have owned different types of small businesses. And so sort of come up from the small business aspect, worked for the Chamber of Commerce for a while. And again, have a sort of a rounded business and politics sort of background, entrepreneur as well. Cannabis, I was spent about the past 10 years looking to get into the legalized cannabis business.
Oh, very good. That's interesting. Now, would that be just medical, or would that be to the general public?
I originally started in New Mexico. I applied for a nonprofit license, which was one of 12 new licenses they put out back in 2015, 2016. And so I applied for one of those licenses, and unfortunately it was not really based on merit at that time. It was super expensive to apply and was very competitive, and unfortunately we didn't get licensed at that time. So I did both move to Oregon to get into the legalized side of it, non-medical, and then tried again here in California as well on the the recreational side. So again, it's both, but started out in the medicinal side just because actually I have a lot of not necessarily beliefs, but there's clinical showings that cannabis is medicine. It's not deserved of being a Schedule 1 drug with no medicinal purposes. Has many medicinal purposes that also plays into some of the targeting. I know that it's not for everyone, but many people with V2K get relief with cannabis, different types of vapes and different things. And so just coming from the business, from a medicinal purpose, it does serve some targeted individuals, some relief. And I've wondered my, use of cannabis, if I'm not one who gets to the B2K, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mine is very, just spurts of things said or over and over and over again certain things. I don't have it 365 days a year, but I also, based on other targeted individuals in cannabis, wondered if it might help to block some of that. But again, that's just my observation with my own particular targeting.
I see. A close friend, DJ Chris, out in California, he uses cannabis, and he has found that it has helped immensely. He'll tell you straight up, right out front, that it does. But that's great. So you've had a great education in small business, accounting. So you were all ready for Congress.
Yeah, that's sort of at the time when I applied, I just decided I wanted to go into politics. And so I applied and I got the job. But yeah, that's sort of what I came in with. The federal government, of course, has many, many, many issues, and so mine was really the focus was small business. I did some stuff with the Federal Reserve, where you have different areas of issues. Mine was women's issues, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, small business. So because I came from that, that's sort of the issues that I took over. Oh, and also immigration as well. So I did different casework based on those type of issues. If there was an issue with the IRS, that was generally a case that came to me. Um, so yeah, again, my specialties were immigration, IRS, Federal Reserve, and women's issues.
Yes, I agree. Women have been shot down for so many years. It's refreshing over the last decades to see them rise above it and stick together. Okay, I think we'll start our questions if you don't have any objections.
Sure.
During your tenure as a congressional staffer, what was the most awe inspiring, surreal event that took place?
I would say, and this isn't necessarily awe-inspiring, I guess, in a positive sort of way. There was, and this is why I tell people not to bring their medical records in there because number one, they don't have the capacity to deal with medical records and a HIPAA without HIPAA violations. But I had a case of a man who was in there for veterans issues, but he had all sorts of different cancers and just terrible things, terrible health issues that were just terrible health issues. I don't want to go into it too much further, but this guy just had so many problems and so many issues that were stemming from the Agent Orange issue. And there was the federal government had like a fire or a flood, I can't remember which one it was, in like St. Louis. And I may not be telling this right, but this was the basic gist of it, where they had kept all these records for these veterans and the records had been destroyed. And so he was on a special mission in Thailand, and he was technically in Vietnam, and there was this, like, he had to go in and prove, in short, to go in there and prove, because the government had lost its own records in some sort of act of God, fire or flood, and to prove that he had been in Thailand, because technically they weren't supposed, Thailand wasn't in whatever their duty area, and it was just this really super complicated case with major health problems that this guy had from the Agent Orange, and just really just sort of gave me the in-depth issues that there are with sort of the veterans, and then also with just the vast amount of records the government keeps, and how you have to deal with them. They lost their records, but you still have to prove that. And so he eventually, it worked out in his favor, and it went the way that he needed it to go. But I just really, the amount of suffering that this man had for, and here he is a veteran, he'd done all these things for, in his military duty that were supposed to be these great things and on these special missions. And here they just sort of, like, as soon as he's not active duty, he's just nothing, and just oh, you have health problems, oh well, we're not paying for that. And
Right.
oh, you have this special mission. Prove that you were on this. What do you mean? It just was really frustrating, I guess, for me. So I guess awe inspiring in the sense that there was just issues just in the way the government runs, less sinister than it is about just things that happen that are just difficult to get around. And which I'll explain later. Also, I know we're going to talk about Havana syndrome a little bit later on, which this is sort of there's a thing in the government that sometimes they know that things are going on with people like this Agent Orange and such, and they don't have a category. I know it's as simple as this, a category where to put this as a medical diagnosis. They did this with PTSD, and so they have all these people that they know this that the issue is wrong with them, and they don't have a way to put them in there and diagnose them. And there's all these, like, the hand doesn't know what the foot's doing, and so they have to get all these different pieces together to get the diagnosis in there, even though they know that there's a million people that have this Agent Orange. And then it's just it's really just annoying medical industrial complex, hand in hand with military industrial complex, just making it difficult for people to get basic care for injuries that they have that the government has done to them and documented, and trying to prove that they've done what they know they've done to you. And it's annoying, but it really, this is the same position that targeted individuals are in right now. They know that this is real. The budget, there is, these directed energy weapons are in the budget. They're in the CRS reports. They're already spending billions of dollars on these. You can find them in the military magazines. The dots have to be connected. I do think that this is a good thing with the Havana syndrome, in the sense that it was diplomats that are currently employed with the U.S. government, because that has opened up a door, even though it's slow turning wheels. I do think it's a good thing for those who are targeted, who believe to have Havana syndrome. I'm trying to get diagnosed at this point to see, or rule it out. If that's not what's wrong with me, then I need to know what is.
Exactly.
And so,
Doctor, go ahead. Go ahead.
Again, I guess that I hope to answer your question in awe-inspiring. Just I guess, how many hands and feet you have to deal with to get something, for people to get care they deserve.
Correct. I think that when a veteran comes home, I think that he should get a new home, a new car, and all the money that he will ever need in his life, not to mention medical care. Because he or she has risked their life so that we may be free. That's my feeling on veterans. I don't know how many homeless veterans there are, but I know many people that are helping out. And that's what we intend to do. Okay, looking behind you, where can you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? Do you have any specific goals you are reaching for?
Well, yes, I definitely am. I have started a new project that I'm working on, that I hope to see to fruition definitely before 5 years. So I hope to be working on that. And that is a nonprofit that I'm hoping to, I know there's another question about, activism and what I'm intending on doing. And so it's a project that it's not specific to TIs, but it's really to me, we all came from different areas of targeting and different areas of life. And unfortunately, even though it's a big groaner, I came from politics and from the government, the U.S. House, to understand these things in the government. Hopefully see some things that some people who have not worked in the government can see, on how we get to the people and these companies and the things that are responsible for this targeting program, which some of it's the government itself and some of it's contractors, obviously. Anyone who's been targeted for any length of time sort of understands that it all slides down from the federal government down to contractors and military and security. So anyway, the project that I'm working on intends to get to these special interest groups. We can't vote our way out of this, and we're not going to be able to do it without uniting together. And excuse me, of course, I have a little bit of a cough going on. Excuse me 1 second.
I think everybody does. Um, I was just curious while you're clearing your throat. Are you bound by the government by something such as a gag order when you left the government so that you cannot speak of certain things?
I did not have any security level access that would have allowed me to not speak about certain things. Um, there was just things that I learned mostly about the party is where most of my issues came from, less than it did from the house. But usually the clearance levels are where you can't talk about it after you leave if you have top secret clearance or a Q clearance or whichever department you work for. So, but no, I did not have special clearance for anything.
Okay, that makes it a little easier then to ask these questions. You are an activist for targeted individuals as well. You are a targeted individual. How long have you been targeted? Just roughly, you don't have to, date it.
And I understand there are some different theories on targeting becoming overt and covert. And so I was threatened by, again, I separating these two things. I mean, they're tied together because it's similar people, but people who were associated with the Democratic Party threatened me after I had been speaking out and sort of kind of telling the secrets that they didn't want heard. And so they threatened me with that I was going to be their guinea pig. And they threatened me with they were Sputz's army, this Sharon Sputz who worked for Columbia University. And so I sort of figured this out. But 2016 was when this happened. And so I was threatened with, that I was their guinea pig and threatened with this Sharon Sputz. She writes this data software that I believe to be part of the program. But anyway, that I was threatened with that, and then it pretty much turned on like a light switch as far as I became hacked immediately. There was just instantaneously stalking. But these were people that I worked with politically, associated with the party and party politics and campaigning and that sort of thing. And then my ex boss at the time, because I was not working for the House when all of this went down, he was the head of the DCCC, which brings the U.S. House piece into it. Some of his staff members were associated with it. So anyway, it is. I'm looking to write a book. The story is very complicated. It involves a lot of different people and some big name people involved in the campaign. But this really stems from the Hillary versus Trump campaign in 2016. Is where my targeting is. There's just all of the evidence points to that, and especially getting threatened with it. And
So,
then they at the time. Go ahead.
do you feel that was from across the aisle, or was that from your own people?
It was definitely from the Democratic Party, which was my own people at that point. The story is more complicated. It's I also was associated again with not just the U.S. House stuff. The party stuff is a little bit more complicated. I did work with the Chamber of Commerce, so I was involved also in the local politics. I was made it as national delegate for Bernie at that time. And so I was. They wouldn't let me. They kicked me. The party kicked me off because of whatever reasons they can. So they did. And so it started sort of with that, and then I started to like really speak out because I'm not afraid to. But to higher level people like the old lieutenant governor, and just people that I associated with, and started to there was some public Facebook things that happened. I was also asked to be the campaign manager for Gary Johnson's campaign at that time, asked to apply for, put my hat in the ring. I said I would do it. There was the person that brought me in on that, said, that this would make the Democrats mad for years. Like, this would not go away, like, just right away, that this would be years. This would follow me for years, and basically told me that I was basically going to betray everyone if I went and applied for this, or, said I would do this campaign manager for Gary Johnson, the presidential campaign, because also he was the old governor of New Mexico. So it was sort of a double betrayal. And so I put my hat in the ring. I did not get the position. Another state senator got the position, and so it set that off. That was the ultimate betrayal at that point. They did the party itself, the campaign, was going after people in the campaign. There's staff members that are currently murdered under other, they've blamed it on something else, unsolved mystery. Like, it's really difficult to figure out.
Exactly.
But anyway, it was definitely the political party, and they came after their own. They were calling people terrorist cells. It got very ugly. I happen to just know some of their secrets because I was associated with the party, and the people running the party. One is now a secretary, and so it's complicated. There's a lot of big names associated with this. I am in the process of writing a book. And so again, it's super complicated, but it's 100% weaponization of the federal government for political reasons. It's unacceptable. And I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not the only one that they put on, called a terrorist cell, and put on this list. I just thought that it would go away. They would find out that I'm not a terrorist, and like, really, I just, I'm an activist. But that's the same thing in their eyes at this point. They want no activists. They want no protesters. They want no checks. They want no balances. So,
do I get a copy of your book signed?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Although I do need some time to write it, but yes, it's hopefully it will be a bestseller.
That's fantastic.
I would like my story to get out there.
Yeah, I would like. I'd love to have you on again too, but if you're getting into government in areas that we need to go. If there's another area or part of government that you are aware of, looking at your position in government at 360 degrees, are there any other things we should know?
I think that people need to know how weaponized the executive office is, the entire executive office. It's difficult to place it on just one department. It's spread over 11 different agencies throughout the executive office. They keep giving themselves more power. No matter what your perspective is, if you're religious and you believe it's the work of the devil, and this, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. The executive office is so highly weaponized against whoever holds the executive office. Basically controls the world at this point. And people need to realize how serious it is, and that this targeting can happen to anyone for any reason. Mine happens to be something where I pissed off some big people, politically, kind of like a no-brainer, of course, like easy target. But lots of people are targeted for, family law type of things, and vendettas. And if you've listened to anybody's stories, usually pissing off someone, whether you did something or not, it's unacceptable. Number one, at the most lowest level, it's a complete waste of taxpayer dollars that we are like following middle-aged women around, or like people that have radio shows, or whatever reason that people are targeted for. It's not worth the taxpayer dollars. And they only solve 20% of crime, and they do all of this illegal and unlawful surveillance, and they aren't getting anywhere with it. It's not worth the money. And it's going to break us if we don't put a handle and checks and balances on this executive office. So I think, to me, that it's serious. They continue to give themselves more unchecked balances. The new TikTok ban is, another unchecked balance for, for the executive office. But again, I think that's really for me, the most important thing is that how bad this is. This is not. I'm not an alarmist.
Okay, I see. I see. Now, President Biden, see, I noticed it right away when he took office. It seemed like the executive branch had doubled in power. It seems like he did not have to consult with anyone concerning Afghanistan. That was his say, 100%, to move those troops out that day. And it seems like that is why things were so screwed up with that. I mean, we left 700 billion or 750 billion dollars worth of military equipment. I think it was 129 Black Hawk helicopters or Apaches. I can't remember which. But that was a direct result of an executive command. Comment?
They pretty much have not. I mean, from what I understand, they haven't declared war since World War II, and we've been involved in all of these wars and around the world. I don't think that they have to do anything to be able to. They've given themselves enough power. They don't have to ask anyone. They don't have to go through Congress as it's constitutionally mandated. They don't. They get around all of these things with different executive orders and other things that they pass through Congress as well, that like the TikTok ban, which is, they're calling it a Trojan horse because it's just going to allow them to do this with anything. And again, it's just to kind of expand the security state. I think anytime these things get passed, some people know what's going on in Congress. This is just my opinion. Some of them are diabolical and are all for it. And I think that others don't understand that it's the repercussions of how much they're going to, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. So I don't know. There's always this balance between, are we going to give up all of our civil rights essentially to feel secure?
Okay.
And to me, it's gone too far.
I have to interrupt you. We're going to commercial. We'll be right back.
Welcome to TIEvents.org, your official insider for the targeted individual community. As the go-to source for all TI events, we're here to keep you in the loop with the latest and greatest happenings. Discover daily conference calls, meetups, and exclusive events across the USA, all at your fingertips. Plus, planning a TI event? Advertise with us for free and connect directly with the TI community. TIEvents.org is not just a website. It's your gateway to a world of information, connection, and empowerment for TIs everywhere. TIEvents.org, your official insider. Dive in and discover today.
Okay, the other one did not queue. So what I'm going to do is just leave it at that. That was TI events. They are influential in planning conference calls and taking note of new people in the neighborhood. I just wanted to say that your case resembles, I would say, Karen Stewart's case. She left the NSA for basically the same reasons, attacks from within. So I'm going to say that there's an emulation there that you can't miss. But, that's the way it is. That's the way of the world today. Okay, I've got another question for you. You all set?
Absolutely.
Okay, what do you feel is a paramount as a problem that the community has to overcome? And I'd like to discuss this with you as well.
Well, I think the biggest problem is there is a lot of and toxic behaviors which create us to be divided. I know part of it's the programming. Part of the program. I'm, not putting everything on. The program obviously does make people hyper vigilant when you're at a certain point in it, especially when they're doing, what I've known to be referred to as the circle of fire, when they're coming at you from every direction. There is not a lot of unity. There's a lot of finger pointing, who's fake or who's a Fed or who's a, and so but again, it's by design. I know the program also, on top of that, does try to keep targets apart. They don't want our stories to be told. They're too much the same. And if they keep us isolated for many reasons, obviously, that's good for them for many reasons, but also they don't want us to be united. They don't want us to talk about our stories together. They don't want us to get along. And so just the division, which also is part of, the two-party system, and the way that our politics is designed is very divisional, and it's at the height of it at this point. I do think that rolls down into the targeted individual, just the different communities and different groups that are going on. I find it strange that targets, do things that they, is done to them. It's weird to me that if, like just kind of the slander campaigns that go on. But again, this is also by design. We just have to overcome that, just understand, especially now that there's a little bit more information out than there was many years ago about this. Like, you didn't understand that they were doing this to you, that this was, things that they had the capabilities of doing, and that they can put thoughts or sound into your head, which sounds, you think it's your own thoughts. So again, understanding the program and just coming together and uniting through all of these different things. No matter what, we're all targeted individuals, and we're not going to agree on everything, and that's okay. We don't have to agree, but we don't have to be enemies over it. And so I think, to me, that's the biggest issue, is just coming together and uniting for real, not just, just focus on the things that each person is, bringing to there. If they're preaching division and, not liking other people and getting groups together and bullying other people, I mean, that's definitely not behavior that we should be participating in. I think that's kind of a no-brainer, but yet it still occurs, and it happens, and it happens to all of us, I imagine. But we all have our own, just the targeting itself with the smear campaigns and stuff going on. We've got our own stuff to deal with. But again, I know that there are the gang stalking issues. Simple as that people are paid to come on and troll and harm other people and digitally stalk them and stuff. So, but again, for the people who are actually targeted and who are really, targeted individuals that are working on trying to get this program stopped, we just have to unite together with all of our different religious beliefs and different, types of Christianity or whatever it is. We all believe, most people believe in God. Come together and get at the people that are doing this to us, which are, across 17 different agencies, and part of it's the military industrial complex, part of it's the medical industrial complex. And so again, that I think that we just need to focus and unite if we're going to be able to stop this program, because it's going to take all of us. It's not going to be one person. It's not going to be one lawsuit. It's not going to be one. There's more than one thing going on with this program that's allowing them to do this, and we have to get to all of the different pieces of it to be able to dismantle it. This is my opinion.
Very good. You brought up unity. That's something that I was going to discuss. And my reasoning is the reason why the targeted community is so far behind is because of the targets. And I'll include myself too. But I have tried to unify the targeted community, and I think it's on its way to being unified. We have certain organizations within the community who say, in terms of what the cause is, this is what it is. Well, what I say is, this is what it could be. Let's research it. And we had people coming well, it's this, and that's it. There's no two ways about it. This is the cause. And okay, where's your proof? Let's have it. You know? And they really don't when it comes right down to it. Okay, do you have any comments, or do you want to move on? You got some very good answers, by the way.
I agree with you that we don't know the exact cause, and so there is lots of different evidence that proves different pieces of this, a little bit easier for a lawsuit. There's lots of evidence of gang stalking. There's lots of evidence of different things. I do think TIs need to come together and start gathering their evidence for their own lawsuits. We all have to file our own lawsuits, whether other groups are successful with their lawsuits for for help, which would give legal precedence. Any of these would give us legal precedence. We still have to file our own. And so there are many different things that I agree that there has to be an open mind, and then the evidence has to be clear. It doesn't, these things like this has to be presented in a court of law if we're going to win these things. And so to me, evidence doesn't mean I'm telling you that it's not true. What I'm telling you is that do you have the proof to say that it's true? Because that's what we have to do on paper. It's not about whether I believe it or not. It's whether we can prove it. And that's the thing. There's some of these things that we all know are going on are very difficult to prove. Some of them are easier to prove. I think gang stalking is easier to prove. The hacking, some of these other things are easier to prove. It's difficult to get at what the issue really is, that we have privatized all of the government too far, that this is all for profit at this point. We've incentivized the wrong things, and now it's a monster that we have to dismantle because too many people are profiting off of this in too many different ways, including torture, including surveillance, including equipment. It's just gotten too big. And so again, focusing back on where the evidence is that we can dismantle this program. And so there, and keep an open mind on all of the theories, because many of these things we don't know. And I always say, like, just as a thought, go to all of these theories that are just out there, like start there, like think about them. You can't just my way is the exact way. Like, could this really be, reptilians? Could this really be something that stems from Project Bluebeam? Like, go there, look for it, research it. We don't know where some of these are coming from. And then there's lots of evidence contrary to, certain groups that insist that it is their way. There is other evidence that insists that it's actually, to me, I think it's both. I don't think they're incorrect. But the thing with some of this is their evidence cannot be resubmitted again. So that's out. Like, whether it's true or not, it can't be resubmitted, not as is. But again, I completely agree on where's the evidence and how can we push this forth for everyone, because all it takes is one of these to break through and get us legal precedence to where we can all file our own.
Very good. Now, I have another question. It's actually very general. It's going to vary from person to person. I ask it about 3 times a day. And what do you believe is the reason why the federal government does not respond directly to targeted individuals, aka Havana syndrome victims?
I know when I was in a different time, but when you answer the phones and you take casework, you don't know what. There are people that are mentally ill that come in with things that are not real. There are people that come in with usually the craziest stories you find out are true. But then there's the other side of it where people come in with these crazy stories and then you find out that they're just like everything they've told you is not true. And so you just don't know what you're getting when people come in with a case. And so again, on one side is that the craziest stories are true and then the craziest stories are not, they're lies. Number one, I don't think that the congressional caseworkers that you are dealing with or people who are answering the phone are not aware of the details of the targeting program. Like, it was like, hey, everybody knows. No, they don't. They're not going to tell interns. They are not going to tell low-level staffers that they are torturing people. This is not, they're not going to do that. Now, I do believe the Gang of Eight, who are briefed about this, they're congressionally mandated, they know what's going on. The Secretary of State knows what's going on, but your basic person doesn't know what's going on. So to me, the best way to get at that, the reason why they're not responding is because the data really is, there's so many different issues and so many different things. The best way to do this, and I put out a blog post on this last August when they were in recess, and tried to work with another group that didn't feel that what I said was valuable, but this is the way that we'll get the attention that we need, is that it all has to be at the same time. So right now, obviously the Israel-Palestine thing's going on. That's constantly so when you answer the phone, it's going to be either about TikTok or Palestine and Israel. So you have to flood them, every single office, every single one, all 535 reps, of issues about the targeting individuals. So I was trying to demand a church committee, but we need every targeted individual from every single district, all 535, to pummel them with letters at the same time saying, we want this committee, we need a committee, because the weaponization committee was going on. So the key is really the synchronization of every targeted individual writing at the same time, because then they sort of go like, oh, wow, everybody, what's this? It sounds dumb, but there's so many things going on in the federal government that if it's not on fire, they're not paying attention. So we need to make it on fire. And that is to, whatever our letters are, focus on Havana syndrome, targeted individuals. We want, we need our own weaponization committee, not just this thing that's set up for Trump. That there's so much focus on Trump and less focus on targeted individuals. We need our own. I just don't know if they're going to really be able to do a church committee without it. Records were stolen last time, which set off the church committee, which of course revealed MK Ultra and these other things that we now know to be true for the targeting program. So without someone, a low-level hacker has been my, prayer that goes in there and gets these targeted individuals' records, which then they go in to, demand these investigations into the FBI and the CIA. So that's the way I feel is the best way to do this. But of course, this is a piece that is missing here, that they have to have the black and white evidence somehow, some way, tying this targeting program either to the targeted fake categories in the TSDB, or how they are the due process. I get in all of this, I still think the due process in this is where that we as targeted individuals would be able to get to them, is that all of this, no matter what the list, no matter what they're doing, none of this, all of it violates due process. Every single bit of it.
Okay, that's an interesting view on that, and I will tell you straight out that I agree with it wholeheartedly. Now, do you believe that this is exclusively government, or is it spread out among, we'll say, private corporations, maybe private individuals, hitmen, possibly, that are paid a sum to go after one particular person? There are a lot of ifs, and there's no buts.
I believe all of the above. I in my research and finding out that there is, there's executive orders already that have been pushing military equipment down to, the security state and to police stations, and, all of these every little sheriff's office has got a tank and, all sorts of stuff. And so that goes on the regular, that we are now militarizing our police. So I also have evidence that at least the fusion center data, or whichever data is, which I believe it to be the fusion centers, is where they are using the gang stalking. Scientology uses that. I can tell you the cannabis the cannabis industry is all run by old cops. They're the cannabis corporate cannabis, not just your basic, basic player, but the corporate cannabis. They're associated with that. They use the fusion center data. The actors, the Harvey Weinsteins over here in Los Angeles, where I'm at, they all hook into that money. I've heard as low as $2,000 can get you listed for any reason. It is how they do to me, I think most of the stuff over here, the Hollywood stuff, their sensationalism is mostly just a show. I do think that they use the security. I know they use the security systems and the fusion centers to stalk people and to do the things that they do with their, if anybody follows any of this stupid Hollywood stuff, but it's still gang stalking. It's still run through the state. They're still using the same system. So 100% every single person that you mentioned has the availability to this list or real-time data on those who are on this list.
Now, you were at the heart of our government for 10 years or thereabouts, plus minus. Did anything ever come across your desk that seemed like it may be related to targeted individuals looking back from 2024?
And I've been asked this question before. I was, originally my ex-boss ran on, one of his campaign promises was about the Patriot Act. So there was, at the very least, they knew that there was the possibility or the likelihood that Patriot Act issues were being misused. But it was not at the time. When I was there was a no-fly list. And so, there was no recourse at that point to, if you could, get off the list. You were just on this no-fly list. And then a couple people popped up on that no-fly list, including my own dad, who has the same name as this guy who was an exiled president of Liberia or some kind of weird thing. And so we had to go in there and prove that he was, not this Charles Taylor from Liberia. And then another friend of mine, but this was at the very beginning of the list. And so it was sort of like, okay, prove who you are. And then they left you alone. But there was somebody that came in that was not across my desk, but it was within my office, and it got talked about by, between us as caseworkers. Just to find out, they just came in here kind of thing. And so this was a guy who was on the no-fly list, and he was not happy about it. So of course he came in and, opened up a case with us, with this other caseworker that, that I talked to about it. And at the time, again, this was a while ago. And so I believe it was the TSA at the time, he said. And this never happens. Like, they do not come in here. There's been a few incidents that have happened, but like the executive branch people that we can't reach through Congress, like the FBI, do not show up in our office. The TSA does not show up in our office unless it's a debriefing or something like that. So the guy, of course, opened up this case and was not happy about being on this list. And so the TSA, if I remember right, came in and said, this guy is not a good guy. Like, I can't give you any more information, but he deserves to be on this list. And so there wasn't anything that we could do other than, tell the guy, oh, whatever. But then as soon as there was other people, it wasn't just him. So of course, Congress went in and gave recourse to people who were on this list, that there is some sort of way to get yourself off if you're truly not, you don't deserve to be on the no-fly list. It's pretty serious. That's level 2 of the, TSDB. Level 1 being they know that you're a terrorist without any doubt, and level 2 is the no-fly list. And so they did put the recourse in. Guantanamo happened when I was working there. That was pretty serious. That was, of course, also found by other, congressional senatorial aides, uncovered that. That to me, which I think that Guantanamo is a similar situation to targeted individuals, which I do believe, the FOIA docs put it straight with the categories 3 and 4, I do believe that's where targeted individuals are. It's for activists, for whatever retaliation and activists, and they can hide behind this security veil on it. But I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it does. You have pertinent knowledge on every question that I have asked, and then some. Thank you very much. The next one I have, if you're ready for it, is I realize this is a relative question and it's subject to perception, but is your targeting debilitating to the point that you have difficulty with your daily tasks?
Definitely. I know that there's levels of this. Like there are times that it has been turned up to what I call level 10, to where it's very debilitating, and I've had headaches for days and different things that were going on that were definitely debilitating. And then as the volume has been turned down in certain areas, it's been easier to deal with. But yes, certainly the headaches to me are the things that I'm unable to deal with on a I can't work around it, whereas other types of things I can. It's which of course ties into this Havana syndrome, which I believe it to be part of that. It's very similar to the other headaches that other people do. But essentially it's, an immaculate concussion essentially, and it's very painful and very there's dizziness and other stuff that comes along with it that's different than migraines. I don't know if you deal with headaches, but that's really my biggest.
I
And yes, they're
deal I
debilitating.
deal with remote neural monitoring, which V2K is a part. It is very traumatizing. There's no real way to even describe what happens. But we'll get together and I'll try. The Secretary of State, I think probably 2 to 3 years ago, put forth a questionnaire to the U.S. diplomats and targeted individuals. I did receive one myself. Were you active in proliferating this questionnaire?
I was not. My really studies have come more recently, I think probably than that was put out. And I wasn't involved at that time with the government. I was working in cannabis.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I didn't know when you actually left, per date, time, whatever.
I do think it's a good thing that they've put this out again. I think that this is a push forward for them to get their hand and feet together so that they have a diagnosis to be able to give to someone, to be able to, damages and other things, or even just to get treated in the vet system or these other things. It just takes a lot more effort to get each hand and foot together. I do. This is a good thing, and it is a good thing that they were still working for the U.S. government, because I think people kind of, when you are an ex-employee, they can somehow justify it in your mind that maybe you had done something, or maybe you were, deserving of that. But those people, from what I understand, are were still employed with the government, and were even through the lawsuit, and still potentially some of them are. So again, that's a good thing. If you follow what happened with the Agent Orange and how that went with certain people, and then PTSD, that was one that I sort of accidentally followed through with. My ex father-in-law essentially was one of the people from Vietnam that had that, but before anybody knew what it was, with the shell shock, they used to call it. And
Correct,
so
yes.
yeah, so then they didn't have a spot for it. They didn't know what to give veterans. It's not, a disability like hearing loss and these different, they have disability, I guess is what is better word. It ties to the disability as well. So if they don't have a category of disability for Agent Orange, they don't know where to put these people, and it like clogs up their disability. Like, it's dumb stuff like that clogs the government up, which is just, just dumb big things that just have to be worked out. I don't know how any better to say it. It's not anything that's evil. It's just dumb organizational mess. But again, I do think that there is going to be the damages that they're going to have to pay for the amount of targeting that they've allowed the executive branch to do is going to, I'm a little afraid that they're going to do sort of what they did with 9/11 and with the, others so that they couldn't sue the airlines. They put kind of a big fund together. I really think that's what's going to end up happening because there's so many people that are going to be affected by this. Because this is, I mean, obviously it's coming out clinically and other things. I do think the Havana syndrome is a good place to start right now as far as lawsuits and trying to prove your case for those who are affected by that type of targeting. Get your medical case together now. Start again. For me, if that's not what's wrong with me, then tell me what's wrong with me. And so I'm seeing a neurologist. Of course, and here's part of the targeting that I also wonder that they do this. I've had these debilitating headaches for 7 years. And the second that I'm in front of a neurologist that sent me for special testing, my headaches have just miraculously gotten better when I'm about ready to go into a test. And so again, I don't think that's going to, any long-term damage they've done, it's not going to make any difference. But again, if that's not what's wrong with me, then I need to know what is. But it does seem to follow the same diagnosis and type of injuries that the Havana syndrome diplomats had, and which I suspect a lot of people are getting diagnosed with it, not just from, I guess Dr. Hoffer was the first one for the diplomats, but there are other doctors that are giving these diagnoses. And my doctor didn't blink an eye when I told her I worked for the government and I thought I had possible Havana syndrome. So it's definitely TIs are in a better place than we were. This is really, it's gotten so big, it's coming out now.
Exactly. This is what I've been saying for years. Eventually, the technology is going to catch up with us. And it has, and it's gone by again. But at the same time, people are seeing this everywhere, not just in activist posts, but they're seeing it in the New York Times. They're seeing it everywhere, mainstream news. And it's really fantastic. We have many people who are always, continually writing letters to the government. Could you, in your position, advise the listening audience as to which branch of government to write to, which individual, and what do you think their success rate would be?
I don't think that they are listening to us, and this will go into a little bit on my project. However, when I was working there and the way that they collect data, they do listen, especially when it's pummeled at them. And so definitely write your federal reps. I mean, the sheriff's department, it does slide down, but where you're going to have the most bite is with the federal government, because that's where it starts with. And any of these monies and things that are sliding down to any state departments or security contractors all starts with the federal government. So definitely write to your congressional reps. The way that the offices collect data, for instance, if you fax over, I tried to explain this to a group and they didn't, I don't know if they just think I'm pulling their leg or whatever, but they don't really look at those that get faxed over there because they're for organizations. They're not on the front lines. They're not their constituents. If you want, you have to, come out of the closet and call your reps, go to the, congress.gov and find my rep and write your 2 state senators and your representative. And then, work your way into others like committees and different things. Again, I put out a blog article that sort of, and it's very lengthy because this is a lengthy topic, but in short, write your own representatives. They don't answer necessarily. It doesn't mean that they don't collect the data in some way, shape, or form of non-constituents. Offices do that, but that doesn't matter. They're there to represent their constituency. So if you don't live in California, don't bother writing California reps. if you want to write to the committee and about the committee, that's a different story, because there are certain committees that definitely need to know about this. And, House Judiciary, some of the committees. But again, if you go to my blog, Shiloh Taylor, ShilohTaylor.com, there's a blog that I did back in August that sort of gives the information, also links to Find Your Rep, and then to the Gang of Eight and the different committees that are important in writing to them. But most important, the thing that people can do right away is write to your own rep. Again, you can fax them. They don't really pay attention to that data, and it doesn't matter to them. The biggest bang for the buck is each person writes to their own reps all at the same time. And if we can get as many people to write at the same time about the same issues, that gets their attention all at the same time. And so that is really the best way that we can get things, even more so than protests. I'm not even a protest person. I don't think they're effective. What gets their attention is the protesting type of thing, like boycotts, and then also when we all pummel them. So again, your own federal reps are the best people to start with, because this is a federal issue. This is really across, again, 17 different agencies in the federal government. It is all executive branch offices. If anyone back to, simple civics, there's 3 branches of government. Obviously, the checks and balances for the executive office are, of course, Congress, number one, and then, of course, the judicial, which they're appointed at this point. So there's an issue with a lot of the judges are not good. They're not. They're appointed by special interests. They're not. They're hard to get to because they're not voted in. They're appointed. It's a difficult check and balance for them. Other than I do think that it works with the line items and different things. The Supreme Courts that shoot down different things. The system works in theory, but the problem is that things have changed in the game. And so again, this is moving forward to my project. A little bit is. There's a big thing that happened in 2010 that has really changed the political game, and it's left us without any recourse to get to these special interests, the military industrial complex, which is number one key to stopping targeting, is to getting to these for-profit. They're making money off torturing us. This is part of their, whether you believe in it, it's an experiment. Some of it is. Some of it's, they're testing weapons. They're doing these different things. It's a test from the CIA. There's lots of different reasons for targeting. And so, but again, all of them stem from the executive branch's overreach into our human and constitutional rights. And the only way we're going to get the rules changed or the game changed is to start with Congress.
Okay.
And so I think that most of them need to be removed is my last point.
All right. It's that time again. It's time to close up for the night. It has been a great pleasure having you on. I'd love to have you on again. I'll be in touch. And if I didn't have a conference call to prepare for here at 9 p.m., we'd let this run until midnight. But at this point in time, we have to get going. So I'd like to say thank you very much, Shiloh. I'd like to thank my listening audience, our supporters, and I'd like to say good night from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Frank Allen.